everyone. Welcome to the Unfiltered Podcast. My name is Lee Stephenson, and I have the fun and the joy, the privilege of being able to oversee church planning for Converge, and my co-host here.
I'm Danny Parmelee, and I oversee church planning for Converge Mid-America.
And we're just continuing the conversation about church planning, pastoral ministry, and leadership in this season is completely different. And I don't know about what you've heard, Danny, but I know in a lot of the conversations I've had, I see it in our church as well, is that there's a lot of people who are just struggling emotionally, and they are facing a dark side of whether or not it be a dark side of their marriage, a dark side of their own personality, their own leadership ability. And I've been trying to peg what that thing is, and sense that there's an element that there are a lot of people in our churches, a lot of people in the community that may not even be connected to church that are just wrestling with the lack of purpose in this season. What are you seeing? Are you seeing that true as well?
Yeah, I think so. And there's probably a little bit of a time gap or some time that probably went by for this to kind of show its face. Because in the beginning, people just, they're hunkered down. They have this resolve. But over time, you have people that are starting to, of course, lose their jobs. And for some, it's even a matter of just their job changing and how many people are even working from home. And whether we like to admit it or not, there is a certain element of purpose that we get when we're gathered and we're in meetings and we're giving presentations and people are saying, good job, like you did. And now it's like you're stuck behind a computer doing Zoom calls, and maybe some of those same things happen, but it's just a totally different feel, different environment. And I don't want to be sexist here, but especially even for men, and how much identity and value, not saying it's right, identity and value that they get from that work environment, because I'd lump myself in that category as well.
Yeah, the affirmation just isn't the same on a Zoom call as it is when you get in person in something. And I think specifically, even for pastors, it's different preaching to a screen and a camera than it is preaching to a live audience. And sometimes that, you like the affirmation you get instantaneously when you crack a joke and people laugh. Now you crack a joke and you have to like create a fake pause. So expecting that people at home are laughing to the joke.
No difference for me, Lee, in my preaching. They weren't laughing before anyway. So, and my wife has told me that. So,
hey, at least she keeps it real, man.
Yeah, but no, I absolutely agree. I mean, it is a different thing, and even if it's not the laugh of the joke, it is the handshakes afterwards that you're in the lobby and people are exiting, and again, I mean, this
You don't
just
get to connect with that's a hell of a speech.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and we know, and we're fully recognizing and saying that there is so much of that is of the flesh. So I think that it's a great opportunity to even just recognize that as pastors and planters, and to say, yeah, man, I really did kind of feed off of some of that, even though I'd say it was all for the Lord. So just to kind of recognize that and maybe take that to the Lord in prayer. But there's a reality element to it as well, that we were created to be in community. And there is that sense of even genuine encouragement that I think that we all need as people. We need it as pastors as well. But to think of now people in the congregation, it's the same thing in their work environment too.
Yeah, I totally agree. So thinking through from a strategy standpoint, for our pastors and church leaders out there, if we know that so many of the people in our congregation are wrestling even with what we're wrestling with maybe redefined purpose or lack of purpose, lack of affirmation towards purpose in their lives, how can we as the church step into those moments? Like what words of wisdom would you have for a pastor or church leaders in knowing the purpose is an issue right now?
Yeah. I think the easy low-hanging fruit on it is the teaching element. And it's teaching with authenticity. So even if it does become a 3 or 4 part sermon series, which I believe would be evangelistic, because just like you said, there's people not going to church, they're wrestling with the same thing, and they probably have a harder time of even identifying why they're feeling that way. So if pastors and planters can give words to that and to say, this is what's happening even in me, and I recognize that this is probably happening in other people as well. I think that is, just at least somewhat of an easy way to be able to address that. What about you? What are some of the things that you guys are, or that you're even doing within your church that goes beyond kind of the speaking from the crowd, the online sermon type of thing?
Yeah, number one is just trying to get people more engaged, and we'll talk about that even in a whole nother episode. Just talking about how church engagement happens and how it's changed, but it's more about not just engaging by commenting on Facebook. It's more about how they engage the mission, and really, it's we are leveraging everything we can, and in the conversations I'm trying to have with pastors as well. Leverage everything you can to help people understand evangelism, the mission, like those things need to happen continuously outside of the 1 hour Sunday
Yeah.
experience that we're
Hmm.
used to.
Hmm.
And I do think that requires a different level of intentionality and relationship than probably a lot of churches have given in, over the history of the church, that we think, man, if we can get them all to church, then we can really evangelize. And
Right.
we've put so much emphasis on the professional staff or the professional leadership, and the reality is we've got to have a paradigm shift, which I think is a good thing, of how are we actually training, equipping our people, and helping them understand the importance of this. That God is in essence scattered the church, but that doesn't mean that the mission has stopped.
Yeah.
And we've got to press into this more than ever.
Do you have any like super practical examples of whether that you're teaching them something or even giving them an example? In other words, like, hey, this isn't just about showing up at 10 a.m. and using the chat feature to, chat with others, or, just making the shift from, instead of inviting them to church, invite them to the online service. Um, this is how you can engage your neighbors, because backyard barbecue outreach probably doesn't, not yet at least, isn't still going to be there. But yeah, I don't know if you have some different examples.
Yeah, a couple things that come to mind. One is we've readjusted all of our series in this season to focus in on that. And so it is a natural part of our conversation that we're just having. So, like for instance, just even this past weekend, my entire sermon was Ephesians chapter 5, and just talking about the church. Like, why is the church important? Why did God create the church? And even more, helping people understand, like, why does God even call us the bride of Christ? Um, I don't think a lot of people, if we're honest, a lot of people in the traditional pews, our congregants, truly understand the purpose behind the church.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to come back to that and help them understand, like, there's a benefit of why church is important in your life, and then help them connect the dots. Like, knowing that church is important, what are you doing to help other people connect to this truth? And then just talking about how do you um, love your neighbor, and how do you be the good Samaritan in this season, whether or not that be through via social media, or writing a note and dropping it off at your neighbor's house, to trying to get groceries for a shut-in. There's just practical ways of trying to help them look for those open doors that God's already created right in their backyard, that maybe before they were too busy to notice. But now, because things have dialed back, they realize, man, I have more time and I should intentionally connect with them.
Yeah, that's great. I think too, it's unique because there is such opportunity to reach out right now. At the same time, you don't want to offend someone. So,
Yeah.
I saw, one of our church plants, doing flower delivery stuff. And I'm like, there's some people that probably that just made their day. There's other people that said, what the heck are you doing on my porch? And how am I going to kick this vase or flower
Yeah.
off because I don't
Want the cross
want your, yeah, I
contamination
don't want
in
your
the house.
COVID, yeah, your COVID contamination on my thing. So it's just a really unique time of how you try to do, how you take some of those different risks.
Yeah. And then I think, leverage your volunteers. Like, give the phone list of all the people that have been in your church, and just say, hey, would you mind call 10 of these a week? And just check in and see how they're doing. And I think naturally that begins to build as well. They realize, oh, I can do this, and they don't even need to be connected to my church
Right.
in order to be able to do this. And you're retraining people, even just the art of hospitality, even though hospitality does look different in this time.
Right. I know we've talked about it before, but I don't know if you have any comments on when people lose sense of purpose, and especially those who have struggled with mental health issues. How can the church, I guess, just be aware of that, or how can pastors or planters maybe realize some of those different signs of mental health that they should intervene and not just wait because COVID's not a bad snowstorm that is going to get cleaned up in 2 days type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, great question. I think number one, you've got to voice that there's a way to help. So just make it real obvious, super easy for those that are willing to self-elect and say, "Yeah, I need help," to be able to take the next step. That's really all you need to create is what's the next step? Because I think honestly, a lot of people don't even know what the next step is or where do I go in order to find help. And so make that as easy as you possibly can. And I think talk about it on a regular basis, communicate it to your people via text, email, through your social media, and even, add it into your sermons. Like we created a separate page. We just call it our We Care page. And so people can go there and they could schedule time to meet with a pastor if they wanted to do that. They could schedule time literally directly to go meet with a professional counselor, let alone the ability to, if they needed benevolence needs, they could fill out a form directly to be able to access benevolence funding.
Yeah.
So again, it was a one-stop shop for everybody that had those type of needs to be able to go to.
Oh, that's great. Are you willing to share that so that people can copy that great idea?
Yeah, it's harvestflorida.org/we-care. And
That's great.
you can find what we did there. So harvestflorida.org/we-care.
See, that's great because it covers so many different things. So that's something then as a resource that you can literally mention in every sermon. And the other thing is this equips people from your church when they hear about needs to say, hey, well, have you gone on the website? And that could even be people that are outside of the church that then get connected to the church because they see that the church is, providing a need that way. So,
Exactly, and you'll be shocked by how people connect with that. I ran into a guy just in the parking lot 2 weeks ago that loose affiliated, not a Christian, um, been maybe 2 or 3 times to the church ever. I appreciates religion. I should put
right.
that kind of perspective. But he saw me and came up running. He's like, "Hey, I could use your help." He goes, "I have this acquaintance. I wouldn't even call him a friend, but he's showing the signs on social media and even a few texts that he's given me that he's not right mentally,
Hmm.
and I'm afraid that he's going to blow his brains out."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What? How do I help him?" I said, "Why don't you here's a link, just send him here, and if he really wants help, we can have the ability to give him help." And that equipped him in order to be able to help others as well. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what we've got to be about is how are we, resourcing our people? How are we enabling them to just continue to carry out the mission?
That's great.
Well, great conversation, Danny. Just talking a little bit about just how do we help people in this season that lack purpose. And even for those that are our listeners, if you're wrestling with that, I'm going to encourage you. Feel free to reach out to one of us. We'd be more than happy to just sit and talk with you and even pray with you. But until next time, everyone, this has been the Unfiltered Podcast. Please keep it real.